Yields back. We'll go next to the gentleman from Texas. Mr. Babin, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, witnesses, for being here as well. Dr. Murdoch, would you, this question is directed at you. By many metrics, China has caught up or surpassed the United States in research and commercial capabilities. As Chairman Lucas referenced in his opening statements, Chinese universities are publishing many more research papers than U.S. institutions, and they receive nearly the same share of citations as U.S. papers. How concerned are you with the pace of AI progress in China, and what can we do about that?
Wonderful question. And just a quick comment on methods of how we determine who's leading. Research is an easy place to start. It's an easy place to count. I think, just want to say what is probably very obvious, patenting, investments, talent numbers, job postings, all these other data sets are really important to take into account. Also, it's really important to mention scale. I think in 2021, China's population was 4.25 times the US population. So therefore, just on sheer statistics, you're going to see quantity numbers going to be outstripped by China. So that's just some observations about the measures. About how concerned I am, which I think is a very interesting question. My image of going forward, I've been following China for well over 15 years, and it's been written on the wall for a long time that they were going to be a peer innovator. We've known it was coming. So the metaphor that I come into is a kind of a grappling situation. China and the US and its allies will be grappling with its different values and different approaches for the foreseeable future. And when you're in a grappling, you don't freak out when someone puts an arm on a shoulder. You know how to respond, and it's a give and take. And I believe that metaphor kind of expresses how I see this going. So I'm not going to freak out about them having a larger number. We're going to have to just figure out how to walk through this, which is why I mentioned the policy monitoring concept is whatever we do, we need to make sure it's working and be able to adapt, because they're going to counter whatever we do at any given instance.
Right. Okay, thank you. The American research enterprise currently operates in a transparent and open manner, with basic research being published without restrictions. How can we maintain a balance between ensuring the openness of basic AI research while also mitigating potential threats to national security that might arise from sharing such information? And this is for Dr. Matheny and Dr. Murdoch as well. How can we solve this problem?
Thanks so much. I think that for the largest so-called foundation models, where we're just learning about how they can be misused, how they can be used either in developing cyber weapons, biological weapons, and massive disinformation attacks, we should be really cautious. And so before publishing or open sourcing the largest models, I recommend that we require some amount of red teaming and evaluation in order to understand the risk scenarios before we unleash this thing into the world and we're unable to take it back.
I gotcha. But one quick thing. I believe that all of us here today agree that it's important for the United States to lead in technological advances, especially in the cutting-edge field of AI. Unfortunately, I have seen instances where overregulation hinders our ability to compete globally, thereby forcing growth overseas or allowing others to step in and lead. And I've also seen that the private-public partnerships and how successful they've been have put the U.S. in the driver's seat. And look at our space industry as an example. So, Dr. Murdoch, how do we make sure that we do not overregulate, but rather innovate through the facilitation of bottom-up, consensus-based standards rather than top-down regulations? And can you speak to the role NIST has played in enabling innovation, particularly for AI, and how we can leverage that approach going forward in the rest of the time that we have?
The distributed innovation system within the U.S. is extremely important. I think Congress has levers of, I think one of the core tenets of this hearing was, how do we figure out how to innovate going forward? And I think that we need all areas to be innovated in. And for example, compute has helped move us forward. Data has helped move us forward. Talent helps us move forward. And we need to make sure whatever investment we do looks at like balanced portfolio of all those to be able to move forward. In terms of like the space industry, I think it's really exciting to see how we have led, but we have made policy actions that have damaged parts of our industry. For example, with the satellite industry, when we put in rules that we could not deal with China, we actually, the size of the U.S. Market dropped. And Japan and European countries developed ITAR-free satellite technology that allowed them to increase their market share. So I think we have to be very, going back to that wrestling or grappling concept, we have to be very cognizant of everything we do will quickly be adapted and tried to be used against us. And we have to be able to adjust our policies and monitor them. So I think that monitoring action of like, how well is this working, is actually a core part of anything that Congress is going to do going forward.
Thank you.
If I can add on the previous point about kind of like ensuring that open source and open science is safe, I think it's important to recognize that when we keep things more secret, when we try to hurt open science, we actually slow down more the US than China, right? And I think that's what's been happening for the past few years. And it's important to recognize that and make sure we keep our ecosystem open to help the United States.
Merci.